Hey there, guys. This is Cole. Welcome back to another video for the month of October. Today, we're doing something a little different. Today, we are doing a horror movie franchise ranking video. And today's horror movie franchise I'm going to review is, well, not review. Today's horror movie franchise I'm going to do a ranking of is all 5 Evil Dead movies ranked from the worst to the best. Now, I know many people say this is a pretty consistent horror franchise, that there's no bad movies. Well, I like most of the movies, but there's 2 that I don't care for. But we'll get to what those are when we get to those. But overall, Evil Dead is a rather solid horror franchise that I think it should have just been a trilogy, but that's my opinion. But anyways, go ahead. In the comment section down below, please tell me, how would you rank all 5 Evil Dead movies, or at least the ones that you've seen? But without further ado, let's get into my list. Coming in at number 5 for me is going to be Evil Dead 2013, or in other words, the Evil Dead remake. Now, I know a lot of people like this movie, and hey, if you like this movie, that's completely fine, but I'm personally not a fan of it. My biggest problem with this movie is I personally feel like most of the actors were badly miscasted in this movie, and this movie pretty much, to me, it pretty much lacks the charm that the first 3 movies did, and in my opinion, this is where the downfall of the Evil Dead franchise began. But this movie, despite me not being a fan of it, it does have some good qualities. I do think that the practical effects with the blood and gore are rather good. I do like the ending of the movie and how the final Deadite is defeated. I think that that's a good ending. And I do think this movie has some good production design and good music, but again, I'm just not a fan of this movie. And now, you guys know how John Carpenter said he's not really a fan of the American Godzilla movies, as he thinks they lack the charm that the classic Toho movies have. That is perfectly how I would describe this movie, that it lacks the charm of the original Evil Dead movies. But yeah, not really a fan of it. I'm going to give Evil Dead 2013 a 4 out of 10. Coming in at number 3 is going to be the newest movie in the franchise, Evil Dead Rise from 2023. Now, the only reason this gets this slight edge above Evil Dead 2013, at least this movie tried to do something different. I mean, I do like the idea and concept about an Evil Dead movie set in a high-rise apartment. I do think that is an idea and concept that could have worked. I do think there is some good practical effects in the movie, and the movie does have good sound design and, good production design, but again, I'm just not a fan of it. I did not find the characters that interesting, like the whole mom smiling image, I know that's supposed to be scary, but I didn't really find it scary or comedic. I think the first 3 movies do that much better, and I don't like the whole fan service bit at the end where it just feels like it's trying to copy Evil Dead 2, which is a much better movie, but I'll give it a 4 out of 10, and it comes in at number 4. Coming in at number 3. Now, from here on up, there is a massive jump in quality. The rest of these movies I really like, but coming in at number 3 for me is going to be the movie that kicked off this franchise. That is The Evil Dead from 1981, directed by Sam Raimi. Now, this is a rather good start to the franchise, and I do like the story to this movie, where it's a simple story where you basically have a group of friends from Detroit who basically raised money, and they go out to this cabin in the woods to basically make a movie. But they come across this book called the Necronomicon, or the Book of the Dead, and they basically plan on using it for their movie. But little do they know that this book is actually a demonic book that will possess people, and it becomes a fight for survival where these group of survivors have to survive this Book of the Dead, or the Necronomicon, in this cabin, which that right there is a rather interesting concept. I think that this movie is scary when it needs to be. I think this movie also does have some good dark humor to it. I do think that the main character, Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell, is a good character. The only reason this movie's not ranked higher is, well, I just preferred the other 2 movies above it more, and even though I do think Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell, is a good character, I do kind of feel like he is a little underdeveloped in this movie compared to how they later developed him in the sequels, and the whole ending I do think is a little too abrupt, but other than that, The Evil Dead from 1981 is a good start to the franchise, and I'm going to give The Evil Dead an 8 out of 10. Coming in at number 2 for me is going to be, in my opinion, what was the last good Evil Dead movie, and probably will always be the last good one. That is, of course, Army of Darkness from 1992. Now, what I like about this movie, I like the whole setting change. You know, the first 2 Evil Dead movies took place in the woods, but I like how in this movie, Ash, he travels to ancient medieval land, which I think that's a rather interesting concept. And of all the Evil Dead movies, like, you could argue, honestly, this movie did not... Now, granted, I know why they did it, because the first 2 were, but honestly, this movie is so tame. Like, you could argue this movie didn't even really need to be rated R. Like, it could have been a PG-13. Like, you could argue that, because other than the exception of one scene, it's a pretty tame movie compared to the first 2. And this movie does completely switch tones. Like, for example, the first 2 Evil Dead movies, they were mostly horror movies with some dark comedic elements, but this movie right here is a full-on slapstick comedy, and normally genre switches like that would not work, but Army of Darkness is one of the few rare exceptions that does. I mean, I will say, I do think that this movie does have some of Ash Williams' best quotes. Like, I like the whole part when the main character, Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell, is basically in the village, and he holds like a shotgun, and he says, "This is my boomstick," and then he basically scares a bunch of villagers with it. I thought that scene was funny. And just, yeah, this right here is a great movie, and this is where the franchise should have ended, in my opinion. And I'm gonna give Army of Darkness a 9 out of 10. But coming in at number 1 for me has got to be the second movie, and that, of course, is Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn from 1987. This movie is an absolute horror masterpiece. I thought that this movie, it took everything that was great about the first movie and did it better. I personally think that this movie, you know, it takes everything that was great about the first movie and does it better. The main character of the movie, Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell, I do think... Now, granted, I did like his character in the first movie, but he did kind of feel a little underdeveloped. That's why I prefer the sequel, because Evil Dead 2, it does give him some more personality. I really like the main character. I really like the main character, Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell, in the movie. I also, I like the creativity of this movie. I like a lot of the horror elements. I also like the dark comedic elements. I mean, of course, there's the whole iconic scene where there's like a deer mound on the wall that comes back to life because of demonic possession. And of course, this is the movie where Ash Williams loses his hand and he gets his hand replaced with a chainsaw, which I think is a rather interesting idea. And just, yeah, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, 38 years later, it's a horror classic and easily my favorite Evil Dead movie. So yeah. Anyways, guys, that was my ranking of all 5 Evil Dead movies. I want to hear from you guys in the comment section down below. How would you rank these movies? But yeah, we will talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye now.